faithfully delivering value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today I'll be interpreting the book, Don't Blame Your Genes. Do you believe that a person's talent is innate? Welcome to leave comments and share your views. Genes store life-related genetic information. Genes direct the synthesis of proteins, and proteins build cells and other tissues, ultimately forming distinct individuals. Regarding the role of genes, a common view is determinism, which holds that all our traits, like height, personality, intelligence, athletic ability, musical skill, are determined by genes. Exceptionally talented people often have superior genes, pulling ahead of others from birth. Determinism doesn't deny environmental influence, but it argues that genes come first, and the environment can only make minor tweaks based on genes. For example, someone lacking a certain gene might not be good at music. Training can improve their skill, but only to a limited degree. Masters like Mozart and Beethoven relied on great genes. They had high talent from birth, and with a bit of training, their skill far surpassed others. But author David Schenck notes that recent science has replaced determinism with interactionism, which says genes alone can't determine any trait. Genes must interact with the environment to develop any trait. From this perspective, talent is also a result of cultivation. With the right environment to unleash genetic potential, everyone can achieve outstanding talent. David Schenck is a renowned British writer who contributes to media like the New York Times, National Geographic, and NPR. The book has 10 chapters and 120,000 words, deeply integrating the latest genetics and psychology findings to explain how genes and environment interact. Right, he defines talent as outstanding ability, analyzes its source from an interactionist angle, and offers concrete tips for cultivating it. Daniel Pink, author of the bestseller Drive, praises this book for making people rethink life's essence and future. Next, I'll break down the book's main content into 3 parts for you. First, what is the relationship between genes and the environment? Second, how the environment affects talent. Third, how to cultivate talent. First, let's talk about the relationship between genes and the environment. Determination has a classic metaphor. Genes are like a blueprint that specifies each person's traits, such as height, personality, IQ, and so on. The human body is built according to this blueprint. In this blueprint metaphor, genes have the highest authority, and genetic information is accurately expressed. Interactionism has a different metaphor. Genes are more like volume knobs that can turn on, off, or adjust the level. And the hand that adjusts the knob is the environment each person is in. So how genetic information is ultimately expressed depends greatly on the environment. Now, let's see how environment affects genes from a biological perspective. Genes express genetic information by synthesizing proteins. But the process of genes synthesizing proteins isn't fixed. It's influenced by factors like nutrition, hormones, neural impulses, and more. These factors are related to people's dietary habits, family environment, psychological state, and various behaviors. All of these belong to the environment. In different environments, genes can go dormant and not synthesize proteins, or be activated to start synthesizing specific proteins. The amount of protein isn't fixed either. It changes based on the environment. Scientists have also found that many genes have multiple functions, and when activated by different environments, they synthesize completely different proteins. So even with identical genes, in different environments, the expressed genetic information can vary greatly. The book gives the example of the cloned cat Rainbow. Rainbow was the world's first cloned domestic pet, and its clone is named Cece. Rainbow and Cece have identical genes. According to determinism, they should be identical, but in reality, they're very different. Rainbow is chubby while Cece is slim. Rainbow has a quiet personality, and Cece is curious and playful. Rainbow is a spotted cat with brown, white, and gold, while Cece is a striped cat with white and gray. Now, let's look at the human case. Geneticists believe that within an ethnic group, Genes have many similarities, such as people of the same ethnicity having similar heights. However, research shows that in different environments, height can vary significantly. Researcher William Walter Grulich from Stanford University conducted an experiment where he measured the height of Japanese children raised in the U.S. and compared it to Japanese children in Japan during the same period. The results show that children raised in the U.S. are on average 12.7 centimeters taller than those in Japan, which is a huge difference. Grolich believes this is because children in the U.S. have better nutrition and health care, which are environmental factors affecting genes. Biologist Patrick Bateson from Cambridge University made an analogy. Genes are like the raw materials for baking a cake, such as milk, eggs, and flour. The traits expressed by genes are like the finished cake. We can't just look at the raw materials and know what the cake will turn out like. With different proportions of ingredients and preparation methods, the resulting cakes can vary tremendously. These differences come from the processing of the materials, not the materials themselves. Hearing this, some might ask, if environment has such a big impact, why are some twins who grew up apart still so similar? Let's see how interactionism explains this phenomenon. There's a famous news story about twin similarities. In 1972, a man named Jim Lewis found his long-lost identical twin brother. They were adopted by different families just 4 weeks after birth, and identical twins have nearly identical genes. After reuniting, the Jim twins discovered many similarities. They looked identical, had similar height and weight, and both had first wives named Linda and second wives named Betty. Both drank the same brand of beer, smoked the same brand of cigarettes, and drove the same model and color of car. Similarly, both suffered from migraines. The book's explanation can be summarized in 2 points. The first point is that the Jim twins' environments weren't as different as people assumed. In interactionism, environment includes not just postnatal factors like family life and experiences, but also the fetal environment during development in the womb. The food the mother consumes becomes nutrients for the baby, influencing its development. Some studies also show that the mother's psychological state during pregnancy alters hormone levels, which affects the baby's development. The Jim twins shared the same room for 10 months, so their early development environment was identical. Moreover, their adoptive parents were both working class, and their towns were only 120 kilometers apart, not very far. In other words, the Jim twins grew up in similar family and cultural backgrounds, so both their prenatal development environment and postnatal upbringing were alike. In that, it's quite natural that the Jim twins were actually very similar and developed identical traits. Regarding their similarities, the second explanation is that this similarity is partly due to selective media reporting. When reporting, media selects materials with news value and discards ordinary parts. The Jim twins' story was no exception. To grab attention, media portrayed them as carbon copies, but the real Jim twins had many differences. One was talkative and outgoing, while the other was shy and insecure. While both had 2 marriages that seemed similar, one Jim divorced after his second marriage and later married a 3rd time. If you look hard enough, you can find both similarities and differences in any twin pair. This is common. Media just prefers emphasizing similarities while ignoring differences. All right, to summarizing and conclusive, how genetic information is expressed depends greatly on environment. Depending on environment, both the types and amounts of proteins synthesized by genes can change. Thus, even cloned organisms with identical genes can show significant differences. From interactionism's view, talented people don't necessarily have superior genes. They grew in environments that maximize their genetic potential. Now, in part 2, let's discuss how environment affects talent. The author focuses on environment's impact on 3 traits: intelligence, musical ability, and athletic prowess. First, Intelligence. In the 19th century, many scientists believed intelligence was innate and fixed for life. The leading proponent was British scientist Francis Galton, whose cousin was the famous Charles Darwin. Galton believed intelligence, like other biological traits, was inherited from parents to children. Galton even wrote a book promoting his views, titled Hereditary Genius. Galton can be considered one of genetic determinism's earliest founders, and his views gained widespread acceptance. In 1916, Stanford professor Lewis Terman developed a survey scale to measure innate intelligence. This scale included a series of common-sense questions, math problems, and abstract reasoning tests. The score from this scale became what we know as IQ. For a long time, people saw IQ as reflecting innate intelligence, believing high IQ meant natural brilliance and unlimited potential. While those with low IQ were considered naturally slow, with limited improvement through education. But as time passed, more scientists began questioning IQ's meaning. In 1981, New Zealand psychologist James Flynn discovered that students of the same age in newer generations had higher IQs than previous generations. And now, for example, 12-year-olds in the 1980s had higher IQs than those in the 1970s, a phenomenon seen worldwide. On average, there was an 18-point IQ gap between generations, a huge difference. If IQ reflected innate intelligence, it would mean human genes changed dramatically in just a decade or two. Clearly impossible. Flynn further studied changes in IQ scores. He found students across generations scored similarly on common knowledge and math calculations. But in abstract reasoning, there was massive improvement. Later generations were far better at abstract thinking. Flynn believed this was tied to advances in education. In the early 20th century, schools rarely taught abstract thinking. Over time, teaching abstract thinking became widespread, with schools instructing in methods like inductive deductive reasoning and controlled experiments. Students born later were exposed to abstract thinking earlier and mastered it better, naturally scoring higher. So, IQ measures acquired education, not innate intelligence. If someone has low IQ, it's likely they lacked proper education. The book gives another example of environment's impact. Literacy and vocabulary are key intelligence indicators. In the 1980s, the U.S. government launched a program offering free preschool to low-income children, hoping to boost academic performance.
Targeting 3 to 4-year-olds, psychologists found preschool only slightly improved literacy and vocabulary, less than expected.
The psychologists proposed a hypothesis. Could preschool intervention be starting too late? To test this, psychologists tracked 42 children starting around age 1, recording daily vocabulary exposure. The children came from both low-income and high-income families, with shocking results. High-income children heard an average of 1,500 more words per hour than low-income peers. Over a year, the vocabulary gap reached 8 million words, growing to 32 million by age 4. Psychologists also found high-income families used more complex language and tones. They concluded that language exposure before age 3 profoundly impacts children. More complex language environments correlate with higher literacy and vocabulary. These children also have greater future achievement potential. Having covered intelligence, let's discuss environment's impact on musical ability. Mozart was a famous musical prodigy who performed publicly at 6 and later composed enduring classical masterpieces. To many, Mozart represents undeniable genius. But the author notes Mozart's achievements stemmed from family environment and effort, not innate talent. Mozart's father, Leopold, was an Austrian composer and music teacher. Mediocre composer but revolutionary educator. He believed children could start piano at 2 or 3, common today but radical then. In the 18th century, few believed such young children could learn piano. Mozart showed intense musical curiosity from early childhood. At age 3, Leopold implemented rigorous training with intensive practice and detailed technique instruction. After this strict training to outcome, Mozart began public performances at 6, hailed as a prodigy. Crucially, Mozart's piano skills at 6 were far below adult performers. He stood out because few young children played fluently then. In terms of piano skills alone, many children with modern training can match or even surpass Mozart. Mozart's true legacy lies not in his piano performances, but in his series of compositions. Contrary to popular belief, Mozart's composing journey wasn't smooth. It was full of challenges. His first 7 piano concertos, composed between ages 11 and 16, are considered by critics to lack originality. They were just adaptations of others' work. Mozart's first truly original work was his Ninth Concerto. Composed at 21, this was his 271st piece, 10 full years after he started composing. This shows Mozart became a great composer through years of dedicated practice. In a letter to his father, Mozart wrote, "Those who think creation comes easily to me are greatly mistaken. No one has spent as much time and thought on composition as I have." That concludes Mozart's story. Now let's discuss environment's impact on athletic ability. Many attribute athletes' excellence to genes.
At the 2008 Beijing Olympics, Jamaica won 6 track golds. The famous sprinter Usain Bolt, Jamaican, won 100 meters and 200 meters, breaking world records.
Jamaica also swept all top 3 spots in women's 100-meter and 200-meter. Despite being a poor, underdeveloped nation of just 2.8 million, Jamaica produces better track athletes than Europe or America. People wonder what makes Jamaica special. Soon, media reported nearly all Jamaicans have alpha-actinin 3, a protein enabling rapid muscle contraction. It's produced by the ACTM3 gene, present in 98% of Jamaicans, far higher than other ethnic groups. This reporting suggests Jamaican success comes from special genes, but overlooks that 80% of Americans and 82% of Europeans also have this gene. So by that calculation, nearly 600 million people in Europe and America have potential athletic ability, far exceeding Jamaica's population. Therefore, Jamaican athletes' excellence isn't directly linked to special genes.
It's common to see top athletes clustered in specific regions.
America has great basketball players, Korea excels in golf, and China dominates table tennis. To explain this phenomenon, a field called sports geography has developed.
Researchers believe regional excellence results from cultural, educational, and economic factors combined. Take Jamaica. They've traditionally been passionate about track and field.
In the West, football, basketball, and soccer are mainstream, while track is niche.
But for Jamaicans, track is their football and basketball.
Many Jamaicans start intensive track training young and compete actively.
But for years, Jamaica lacked resources to train promising youth.
Top athletes often left for Western countries and never returned. Then, in the 1970s, World Championship sprinter Dennis Johnson returned to Jamaica, sparking change. Turning point. Johnson, Jamaican-born, trained and competed in the U.S. for years. He created an elite track program, providing better resources and scientific training methods. This program significantly improved Jamaica's track performance.
Plus, as mentioned, Jamaica's poor, but track champions earn prize money.
So for Jamaicans, track improves livelihoods while fulfilling personal pride. Thus, more people joined the track community.
After years of groundwork, Jamaican athletes came to dominate the Olympics.
All right, to summarize part 2, talent stems from gene-environment interaction. Exceptional people don't have unique genes, just environments maximizing their potential. But through education and training, people can greatly enhance intelligence, musical skill, and athletic ability. Now, in part 3, let's discuss which methods effectively cultivate talent in acquired education and training. The author believes the most important method is deliberate practice, meaning focusing on challenging one's limits and constantly self-adjusting. The concept of deliberate practice was introduced by American psychologist Anders Ericsson, who spent 30 years researching how exceptional talents are cultivated. He found that in any field, successful individuals spend more time on deliberate practice. In deliberate practice, people don't repeat acquired skills. They constantly challenge themselves to surpass their current level. Pianists practice more difficult pieces, basketball players aim for higher shooting accuracy, baseball pitchers learn more types of pitches, and failure in deliberate practice is very common. People should learn from failures, adjust their actions, and continue practicing until they achieve goals, then start a new round of deliberate practice. What changes does deliberate practice bring? Erickson believes that when people step out of their comfort zone for sustained, deliberate practice, their body enters a state of stress. In this state, some dormant genes are activated, stimulating cell growth and transformation, thereby enhancing brain and body adaptability to master new skills. This is what was mentioned earlier. The right environment unleashes genetic potential. This process requires significant time. Weeks or months of deliberate practice won't rapidly advance talent. Erickson surveyed deliberate practice times of successful individuals across fields and drew a conclusion. In any field, only by accumulating at least 10,000 hours of deliberate practice within 10 years can one achieve remarkable success. It's clear that deliberate practice demands a lot from people. Therefore, people with exceptional talent in any field are always few. Besides deliberate practice, the author also offers other suggestions for cultivating talent. Here, we'll mainly introduce 4 suggestions. The first is to find a goal that ignites your passion. Deliberate practice isn't enjoyable. People experience significant stress and frustration from failure. Those lacking passion for their goals easily dwell on failures and regrets, which distracts them and prevents sustained, high-intensity, deliberate practice. Only those passionate about their goals can persist through constant failure, learn from it, and do better next time. What kind of goals inspire passion in people? There's no standard answer. Everyone must find their own. The 1981 film Chariots of Fire, based on true history, depicts the vastly different goals of 2 Olympic sprinters. One protagonist, Eric Liddell, is a devout Christian who runs for the glory of God. The other protagonist, Harold Abrahams, is Jewish. He despises anti-Semitic European Christian culture and participates in the Olympics to fight racial prejudice.
Though their goals are worlds apart, both draw passion from them, overcome numerous obstacles, and ultimately win Olympic gold medals.
If you don't yet know what goal ignites your passion, start with things you enjoy. Many people experience passion when immersed in what they love. The second suggestion for cultivating talent is to be strict with self-criticism. Self-criticizing in constructive tone. It isn't self-denial or harsh blame. It means not being complacent with your current level and actively seeking areas to improve.
Otherwise, once complacent with the status quo, people stop progressing and cannot continue growing.
The third suggestion for cultivating talent is to focus on small progress. Developing talent requires a long time. If someone lacks patience and only wants instant achievement, they'll easily become frustrated with their progress rate and ultimately give up. Therefore, when cultivating talent, it's best to temporarily forget the ultimate goal and focus on daily practice and the small progress it brings. The satisfaction gained from these improvements drives us forward, helping us persist longer. The fourth suggestion for cultivating talent is to find a heroic role model. Role models provide strong motivation. This motivation comes not only from the hero's achievements, but also from their ordinary past and effortful journey. Edison was expelled in first grade because his teacher thought he was mentally slow. Darwin's father always looked down on him, believing he'd amount to nothing and bring shame to the family. But both eventually achieved great things. By studying how heroic role models succeeded, people realized that talent development is a slow and arduous process. Many heroes started as ordinary people, which boosts confidence. When facing failures and setbacks, they can still hold on to hope and persevere. All right, let's summarize part 3. The most important method for cultivating talent is deliberate practice. The stress from deliberate practice activates dormant genes, enhancing brain and body adaptability to master new skills. Beyond deliberate practice, people also need passionate goals, strict self-criticism, focus on small progress, and heroic role models. With this, we've nearly covered Don't Blame Your Genes. The author aims to debunk genetic myths. Genes aren't destiny, but evolve through environmental interaction.
In this light, talent isn't scarce, just underdeveloped.
By passionately and determinedly challenging our limits, we all can achieve greatness. After this episode, what new insights do you have about talent? Welcome to share your thoughts in the comments. Well, don't blame your genes. That concludes our interpretation. Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.